Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Quick reminder, support the transmission. The best way you can do that is by becoming a paid subscriber on the Geopolitics and Empire Substack. We do private group Zoom chats every week or two with supporters only to shoot the breeze on current events. Those are not recorded. I also bring back past podcast guests on occasion to do a live Q&A with supporters only. And I do a weekly write-up and commentary of the news. You can also donate through the website. There's many options there. Donor box, buy me a coffee. Of course, I'm banned on PayPal and Patreon. So I take crypto, Bitcoin. It's always a good time to take Bitcoin. And you can purchase a consult if you want to chat with me about whatever you like, expatriating to Mexico or Latin America, geopolitics, the meaning of life. And do check out all of my affiliates and sponsors. Leave a podcast review if you haven't already, and share the podcast and the channels. Subscribe everywhere you find me. Joining us for the first time is Christina Werner of Public Square, which is the nation's largest directory of pro-family, pro-freedom businesses in America. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
Thanks for coming on. You know, we're always looking for ways to fight back against the tyranny, and Public Square is one of the solutions. And if you could tell us a bit, before going further, a bit about Public Square.
Sure. Well, you just mentioned the tyranny, and it's been pretty obvious that corporate America has actively been working to destroy the values that I would say the majority of us hold dear, right? So we've seen this from vaccine mandates back during COVID, cancel culture, censoring speech. You just said that you got canceled by PayPal. We've seen that, the indoctrination, virtue signaling, social justice movement. I could go on and on. What Target chose to do with their employees, letting them travel out of state to get abortions. These are all kind of things the average person is just, we're fed up, we're done with it. But what we saw is the majority of tens of millions of Americans and Christians in general, we keep giving them our dollars. And I don't think it's because people want to, or maybe they're just not educated on the issues, but where do you find an alternative? So that is really why Public Square exists, is to create this alternative so that you can choose to vote with your dollars every day, not just at the ballot box.
And just to dig a bit deeper on that, because as I understand it, you're coming from a biblical worldview, and most of us here at Geopolitics and Empire understand what's going on. A lot of what you just listed off, and I always love getting my guests lay of the land, because there's always a nuance or a piece of the puzzle that I might miss. And, sort of what you alluded to, we've been living through much tyranny, collapse, corruption, insanity the past number of years. And, I focus a lot on the digital authoritarianism that's coming in. They tried to impose digital passports and all this sort of insanity, this biomedical terrorism, which I'll call it. And, globalism in general, where they're trying to centralize power. And, a lot of that has biblical overtones. If you look at prophecy and not to mention wars, and just any further thoughts on a lot of these threats that have been burning in the background.
Well, we definitely come from a traditional American view, which really is a biblical worldview. I can let you know what our core values are. We have 5 of them, but in general, we are pro-life, we are pro-family values. You mentioned this, we are pro-liberty. So we do not require a business to jump on our platform and share their values. They do not need to be a Christian-owned business, but I can tell you there's quite a few on there, because if you're choosing to celebrate life, if you're choosing to celebrate the traditional family unit and liberty, that tends to be people's bent. So that is more so on the business side. Now, the customer side, it's actually really fun to see the type of customers that come to support these small family-run pro-America businesses. And honestly, they're all over the place when it comes to that. So what we're seeing is this shift in the economy. And you've probably even noticed it with Bud Light tapering down what they've done. Target actually, praise the Lord, tapering down what they did last year, over last spring, last April. And we really feel that it's the people that have made a difference in this. It's a lot of the moms of America that said, I'm not subscribing to this value set, and I don't want to see this, so I'm going to shift my dollars elsewhere. So we really say, if a business does not respect you and your God-given freedoms and your values, take your money elsewhere. And we've actually seen it work.
And during the last couple of years, we've seen many businesses, platforms, initiatives just sprout up as a response to everything we're facing. How was Public Square born?
Oh, that is a great question. Gosh, there's a few fun stories to that. But I would just say our founder and CEO, Michael Seifert, who's a phenomenal friend and human being and so intelligent, but he really, him and his wife, here's just one quick story. During COVID, they had a list of about 20 businesses that they felt comfortable going to support. They knew these companies were not going to push back on their personal medical choices. They knew they could just get a nice cup of coffee and not be indoctrinated and feel like it's trans imperialism when they walk into the coffee shop, like some of them that happen here where I live in Southern California. And then they realized, gosh, wouldn't people elsewhere want to also have this? So how do we digitize this list and find these businesses? So there were two major issues that he was seeing: people feeling alone in their values, where you're really not. You're not the only one. And then the second issue, where do we find these alternative businesses? So that was kind of a basis of it. Another quick story was, I think this was back in 2014. He was driving past a Chick-fil-A. Wasn't breakfast, wasn't lunchtime. It was, middle hour, and there was a line around the block to go to Chick-fil-A. And he said, well, this is bizarre. He looked it up. It was National Boycott Chick-fil-A Day, because Chick-fil-A, I think, was taking a stand for a traditional marriage. But what he saw was that Americans will come and support a business that stands up for their traditional American values. So that's another fun little undertone of how he saw, this happened with Goya. You're probably familiar with that, but a lot of other corporations that stood up for their values. And, we even know somebody who did not agree with Chick-fil-A, who waited in line to get a chicken sandwich. And he said, that's okay. I disagree with Chick-fil-A's values, but I think they make a great sandwich. And this is America. And they're allowed to have that point of view.
You mentioned coffee. I just had a flashback to when I went to Texas for the first time in Austin, 2023, at the American Liberty Awards, where I'd been nominated. And I went into a Starbucks while I was waiting to enter to the venue. And it was very woke. For me, it was like I was on another planet, especially coming from Mexico, where there were LGBT plus flags on every business on the Starbucks. I walk in, and there was a lady in line in front of me. It was unclear. Was she first? Was I first? And that sort of traditional mentality of, okay, let the lady go first. And she looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, she told me to go first. And again, in Mexico, I mean, the tradition is, you protect the women, you let them go first. And just, the bathrooms had locks, homeless people everywhere. Nothing against homeless people, who should help them. But it's just kind of like I had landed on another planet. And I think we need to, look for different solutions, as you're alluding to. And if you could tell us, about Public Square, you guys are constantly innovating, developing. And so, you've got the marketplace. I'm looking at the website. So if you're living in the US, you can buy soap, electronics, food, meat, coffee, clothing, household items, electronics, EMF protection from Public Square. I think you mentioned there's a job board. I think there's maybe services maybe that are offered, restaurants listed, and now you say that there's a payments ecosystem or fintech. So if you could tell us a bit more about what people can get at Public Square.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point with coffee, I actually just grabbed, I said, oh, I wonder if I'll have a chance just to share a few Public Square products. I'm drinking my coffee currently right now, and this is the coffee company I'm using. They're a Christian. It's called Boaz Coffee Company. This is their Blue Hero blend. And so it's very common of businesses on Public Square for them to be supporting first responders, a lot of other organizations that are supporting services in America, America First type businesses. So, and their coffee is great. Just personally, I'm not a huge Starbucks fan in general as far as the taste of their coffee, but especially in America, when you go there, some people might not even know this, but I don't know if this is still currently going on, but Starbucks, at least where I was living, used to and may still match employees' contributions to Planned Parenthood. Now, I personally would never write a check of my own hard-earned money to give to Planned Parenthood and support abortion. So as soon as I learned that, you sure as heck don't want to go to Starbucks and give them my money and know where that's going. So, that's just one example of with your coffee. And I want to say there's probably over 1,000 coffee shops online on Public Square. You can also go to the local map and hopefully find a coffee shop if you're in America, and find a coffee shop that's locally probably run by someone who supports a pregnancy resource center or veteran owned, or maybe they just support their family with that, but that you're supporting a great family when you go there to buy a cup of coffee. So to your point, lots of coffee options, but Public Square, we've shifted, we continue to evolve, and we are now America's leading commerce and payments ecosystem. So it really serves customers and businesses that value life, family, and liberty. So there's 3 segments to it. There's the marketplace, which is probably what we'll talk about a bit, and how we kind of got well known. We got up to about 80,000 businesses in America nationwide rather fast. So it is a huge ecosystem of businesses that share these values, but we also have a fintech division that we started to build out of a need so we can have a Stripe competitor, someone that won't cancel you like PayPal canceled you. And then we also have a brands division. And a great example of the brands, actually in a former podcast, I heard you talk about make more babies and how we save the world. And we could not agree any more with you on that. We actually had a campaign called Make More Babies that was attached to our pro-life baby brand. We have a diaper company that supports life. And the reason this came about is we found out that the other major diaper brands in America all verbally or financially support abortion. So yes, I know when you say that statistic, people go, no way. Yes, that is absolutely true. So we decided to create a brand that's going to support life, and it's high quality, premium diapers.
That doesn't square. Baby products, but you want to kill.
Yeah, no. Let's take my morals out of it. Just as a business sense, that makes absolutely. It makes, there's no reason. I mean, I know why. The DEI, I totally know why they're doing it, but no, it really makes no sense.
Just to step back for a sec, you mentioned payments processors. I'm down here in Mexico. I was taken off of PayPal. Thank you, Department of Homeland Security. So I'm actually sending tax dollars to the Department of Homeland Security, who's making it difficult for me to make a living, like square that circle. But I'm using Stripe, and Stripe has Stripe USA, Stripe Mexico. It's global, and I looked into even trying to get away from Stripe. There was a Christian U.S. based payment processor, and when I reached out to them, they told me that only if you're U.S. based. Can you tell us more about what you guys are building and how that might work and how people might be able to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are in the phase 1 of that. I can tell you that wasn't something in the very beginning when we started this marketplace that I personally was on my mind, but come to find out it's something that we need. And it's been a beautiful thing now to be able to offer that to our customers, to businesses, and for ourselves. We have millions of products on the app. So to find something that was quality and quantity that would host what we needed, we actually really needed to build it. So the phase 1 of that is I'll have to get back with you on, being global and when that is going to be a possibility. But I can tell you, we have had some of the most amazing people link arms with us and, come to work with Public Square to build what we're building. And it's honestly very humbling to me to see these people could be retired. They've built payments stuff before. Our head developer, he's just fantastic. And they're doing it because their values aligned. They could be on an island. They really should be. They should be retired, but they're choosing to support and do this because they see the value. And we know Stripe canceled one of their top, I think it was their top 40 performers. And so we know that is something that could happen to any business, especially let's look at America in the 2A space, for gun businesses. That's something that they actually are concerned about, even though it is their constitutional, right for an American to have a gun. They're worried about cancellation. So it is great that it's something that we're working to be able to offer to businesses, actually to churches, to nonprofits, to any entity that wants a cancel-proof payment stack. We are building that currently.
No, I think this is one of the most important the things about this sort of counter economy where possible, we have to disconnect from these systems. And you mentioned Stripe. Not many people are aware that on Stripe's external board, I believe they've got Mark Carney, which is the consummate Davos man who's probably going to replace Trudeau. I think he's been Bank of England, Bank of Canada. He goes to Bilderberg. And Stripe in their summit, I think in the months ahead, that Mark Zuckerberg is going to be speaking at Stripe. So, not good signs. I do want to give a shout out. I'm a huge fan of the Serbian-Australian evangelist without limbs. You probably heard of him, Nick Vujicic.
Yeah.
I saw him speak here in Mexico about a decade ago. He just created pro-life fintech, which is like a bank that's going to function online. I'm going to open an account with them. And so I think we need to work with these alternative systems, because I think it's only a matter of time before I get taken off of Stripe. And then if that happens, I'll probably have to go sell tacos or something. But and you mentioned Planned Parenthood. When I was an undergrad, when you're still kind of green, what do you call it, behind the ears, and you don't know what's what. I remember I wrote an 8-page paper on Margaret Sanger for my history class and wrote about her in a positive light, because that's how I had been indoctrinated in the history schools. And now it's kind of like 180. And speaking of 180, I'm a huge fan of Living Waters, the ministry, Ray Comfort. I met him a couple of years back in LA, and they've got a fantastic half-hour documentary called 180 movie people can watch for free. But just going further then back to the sort of marketplace and public square, how do you guys vet products or companies to ensure that there's not scams or that they're selling low quality products? I take it the social credit or reputation kind of helps deal with that, or what?
Yeah. To your point, that's a great question. And to your point, do we get a lot of people that are antithetical to these values jumping on public square? We really don't. Because they don't actually probably want to be associated with what we're doing. But I have had in the past only maybe once or twice, I know, where it was actually a great conversation between me and the business owner. One of them was actually about Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. And she said, I can get behind all these other values, but the pro-life thing, and it was actually a beautiful conversation just to have with the business owner, just to share with her, well, really, where did the roots of this come from? And anyway, I could talk about that for an hour, but how do we vet these businesses? That's a great question. It is. So when you go to publicsquare.com, it's absolutely free for any entity, a church, a nonprofit, a business, someone selling products, a local service. It's free for them to get on and create a profile, but that profile does not automatically go live. So we have a team of people in our office that go through, and they really are vetting and verifying. They're looking through their website, looking for keywords. If there's anything, DEI on top of there. That was another conversation I had one time, just sharing with the business. And it was actually a great conversation, because I don't think this business owner even knew what was going on his website. It was his CMO that was doing this, so sometimes it's just eye-opening for the business owner to really understand what they're promoting, if they are promoting these quote unquote woke values. But once we have vetted and verified that the business is, from what we can see, quality, a lot of them are made in the USA. That's something we don't require at the moment. But we know that they're agreed to these values. Then we will send you an email back and let you know that the business is live and good to go.
You mentioned made in the USA. I'm just, giving further examples. I interviewed the CEO of Purism, which is a great company, and they make Linux. They're called Librem Linux laptops and Linux phones, and they have an option where you can buy the made in USA version. It's much more expensive, but they're not made in USA version. I think is still good. It uses some Chinese products, but they have hardware off switches for audio and cameras on their laptops, and so that's just a tech example. Just to add on to what Public Square is doing, and just to get your further thoughts on this sort of big idea of what Public Square is doing, this what a lot of us in alt media talk about, counter economy to that of globalism, the one world government. I was recently shocked to discover that Costco, a lot of people love Costco, but it's 70% owned by BlackRock and Vanguard, and Costco has a lot of good stuff. I know. For the longest time, I never really enjoyed shopping there because I felt wrong, like because it's part of this the system. And especially here in Mexico, it's frenzied. They're building the third Costco in the city here where I live, and it's filled to the max with frantic and frenzied Mexican shoppers. It's pretty crazy. So I go maybe once a year to Costco. I don't have a membership, but I think it's in general good to move away from the big box globalist sources of commerce. Just any thoughts on this idea of counter economy and just going away from these big box. Even Amazon is great, but a lot of these platforms are part of this sort of one world globalist system,
Yeah.
who are just centralizing power, and then they can wave that over our heads, where if we don't comply, we will be cut off.
Yeah, and I love how you called that counter economy. And if you're okay with it, I might be stealing your phrase because I've heard parallel.
I stole that phrase from someone.
Okay. Well, we'll just continue the phrase because I heard parallel economy for a while, and a lot of people called us the parallel economy, and that is great. At the same time, I really feel, especially right now in America, there's such a shift, and we feel like there's really going to be a new American renaissance. And like, this is going to be the economy. This is like going back to these more traditional roots, and people are shifting away from these big box stores. I even have two personal stories from Costco, but one of them is with a business on Public Square, and they are a company that has very modest women's clothes. They're very quality. And they had their bathing suits in Costco. And then they realized, I think they were selling really well, and Costco was able to maybe create them or make them very similar to theirs and basically kind of push them out, but use their idea. And so she got off Amazon off Costco. And another story, during COVID, I actually went as a mom with my two children. And I'm, waiting in line to go get some stuff. And I was told by the front door person, you can only come in with one child at a time. This is during COVID and all this stuff. And I said, well, what am I supposed to do with my second child? And bless, the guy at the door actually said, well, you could leave him in your car. And I'm like, oh my word. And that, again, that was the season of COVID when people were just saying nonsensical stuff to people. And I think I was the only person that walked in without a mask. And, so to your point, the big box stores, it's like, okay, we've had enough. And so when you go to publicsquare.com or when you go onto that local map, I have just created the most beautiful relationships with some of the brands that I support on there, both locally and then some of them online, where I get my vitamins from. They're very, very high quality, but I know this family is they're precious. They homeschool their 5 kids. They support the pregnancy resource centers in San Diego, so it's a very fun shift. And a comment I get fairly often is, oh my gosh, but where do I start? My bank, my mortgage, my shoes, my this, my that. Do I cancel everything? Do I cancel my Costco and my Amazon? I did. I canceled my Amazon just to make it a little more difficult and to really prioritize these small businesses. But we just start with one purchase. So if you are going to Costco, maybe instead next time you're purchasing your bathing suit from an amazing quality family-run company on Public Square, or maybe it's your coffee, or there's so many different options on there. You really can find a myriad of products and services on there. So we just say start with one, but when everybody does that, it really makes a difference. It absolutely does.
I think I was starting to read an article today on Substack about how if only like 3 or 4% of people started doing this, it would hit them hard. And your experience with Costco, I mean, that was Kafkaesque. He's literally they're asking you to break the law. If you leave your kid in the car, someone can call the police on you, which is insane. And I just had a flashback to Costco COVID times here in Mexico. I think I went once or something. Maybe I had to make a purchase for family or something, but I couldn't breathe with the mask, and I had to call someone on the phone. And a guy literally half my size. I'm a tall guy, and we all know this. During COVID, when you give these little these freaks, these administrators, a little bit of power, they go full. They bring out the full Nazi or Stalin, And the guy, was in Spanish shouting at me, and he's like half my size. I'm like, he's like a little gnat. I'm like in a loud voice responding to him, like, you're not gonna bully me. And it's just absolute insanity. And also what you mentioned, we're right now, because it's relevant to me as a Croatian Mexican American, in Croatia now, people are boycotting the supermarkets because they make, just as an example, Switzerland groceries are more expensive in Croatia than they are in Switzerland or Germany. And in Croatia, the salaries are much, much less. And so what people have been doing in Croatia now, they've just boycotted the main supermarkets, who are now losing tens of millions of euros. And part of the problem is the mafia government of Croatia and European Union. There's like a 27% VAT tax or something. And there's a mafia that controls the supermarkets, and they're really hitting them hard. So that's one example that's going on right now in Croatia. And there's alternatives. You got bazaars, markets where they sell fresh seafood and fruits and vegetables and meat. And so that's something that can be done. And even here in Mexico, a lot of the Mexicans have got insulted. I laugh at this with some of the Trump policies, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, and they've stopped purchasing, going to American stores. And so, that's sort of an example, which I've kind of avoided these places in general as well. Like I said, Walmarts and Costco's and Starbucks. And so that's a local Mexican example of what's going on here. And even Amazon, what you just mentioned, I had to get these expensive Rode wireless Go's to do interviews on the road. And it was cheaper on Amazon here in Mexico, but I decided to go downtown physically to a local Mexican shop, and purchase them. So it's that same principle of public square in the U.S. or if you're in Mexico or wherever you are in the world, try to find your stuff locally, even if it costs a little more. No.
Yeah, it is so important, and really the power of your dollars, I really just feel cannot be underestimated. What you spend every week, even statistically, Christians spend 20 cents of every dollar earned on retail purchases every year. So really that comes to equate to, it's over $1 trillion of spending. I think it's $1.1 trillion of Christian spend that goes to the Walmarts and the Amazons and the Targets of the world. So 20% of your dollar, right? Those are companies that don't support my values, our values, most likely, right? So just think of when you make that shift to one coffee shop, or instead of going to Target, you go to Southern Homestead Mercantile on Public Square, or instead of Nike, who was, promoting men as women and women's sports and doing some pretty weird things, you can go to Train or Yakima Apparel. There's tons of brands on Public Square. So it absolutely makes a difference. And,
there are any thoughts on similar but different initiatives to Public Square? Look, we mentioned local farmers. There's apps like, I think, Uninjected for people looking to date people who have not been injected. And so I think we're seeing a trend here, no?
Yes. I have been on her podcast. She is a hoot. Very fun. And actually, those are services that you can even find on Public Square. We have quite a few independent farmers, and there's some larger companies as well, like Good Ranchers, that will source from local farmers and give you those products. That's a whole very fascinating but kind of scary topic to touch on, how much of our farming and industry, at least here in the United States, is really run by a very few. And so that's something that is phenomenal for people to be able to do. If they can source that locally, if they can go to a local farm, one, it's just better for you. You're not getting meat that's been packaged and shipped from another country and sitting there for days and then maybe in a semi-hot vehicle, whatever, but it's local, and there's not going to be as much as the mRNA and dealing with all that kind of weird stuff. And you'll have a better product on your plate.
Yeah. And just going further in different solutions, we homeschool, and I think you mentioned you've had experience with homeschooling. And so there are many solutions to these problems. And just any thoughts on this trend of homeschooling, even during COVID, even here in Mexico, it's globally, there's been a huge uptick in homeschooling, not just from Christians, but even just, non-Christians. And so just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really think that's going to be part of this new American Renaissance that we're seeing. And I personally have used Public Square twice to find, one time it was a homeschool pod for my son and my daughter. And it was, I mean, I cried on stage one time talking about it because it was in a season where it was so priceless to have a community that was very, very like-minded. These moms completely got me through working full time and trying to homeschool children. And it was just such a beautiful community that I knew I could be there part of the time, but jump out and take a phone call. And when they're doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and I knew these moms shared my same biblical worldview, and my kids were not going to be indoctrinated with anything weird when they're at their homeschool pod. And then this last year, we actually put our son in a private school in Southern California, and I'm sitting in my bed. It's like 2 weeks before school, and I'm going, oh no, where am I going to send my kid? And of course, I hop on my Public Square app and I find a school. It has just been the biggest blessing for him. That is pretty much in my neighborhood, and it's been exactly what he needed. And if Public Square wasn't around, I would not have found that school. So I've personally been able to use it twice for my kids' education, and super grateful. So, yep, fun.
And any thought? I wanted to bring this up. Churches. Maybe you guys could add churches, because I find there's a lot of bad churches in America that are woke, unbiblical, anti-Christian. Some of my listeners are church shopping. Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, so we do have churches on Public Square. That might not be a big known fact. People definitely picture Public Square and they see e-commerce and product. But any entity that is willing to, or that shares our values, is welcome to be on there. So we do have churches. And last year, I actually had a pastor send me a text with a picture of their latest family that had joined their church. And they said they found them. They had moved to North Carolina, and they found this church, and they knew it would be their home church because they were pro-life, they were pro-family, and they were pro-liberty, and they found them on Public Square. So such a blessing that this can be a growing network, and it is really sad to me to think that not every church is pro-life. But if that's where we're at, and we can at least connect consumers and connect families with a church that they know is going to share their same values, then yes and amen.
Any other thoughts when it comes to Public Square, its future, that we haven't mentioned?
Gosh, in the very beginning, you mentioned the job board, and a long time ago, we actually did ourselves create a job board. This is when Public Square was just in San Diego, California, and it was during COVID, and it came from a need of seeing so many people lose their jobs because of their personal values. And so we had put up a job board really quick. That has now shifted to us partnering with a company called Red Balloon. And it's like, why recreate the wheel if we can find someone who's already doing it? So that is who Public Square partners with. You can go onto Public Square and find Red Balloon, and that is a great job board to be able to use. But I think, we covered it pretty well. It's been very fun. It's been quite the journey. I just looked at my calendar the other day, almost 4 years that we have been going at this. So exciting, but we feel like we're just getting started, and it's been such a blessing. I could share for hours the testimonies and stories of businesses and how they felt supported, and they were able to hang through a really tough season of COVID or financial issues. And it's just a blessing to get to support those businesses.
Any thoughts quick on Trump 2.0?
Oh, my word. Well, we could not be more thrilled to have an administration that is going to support these traditional American values. I mean, it is such a blessing. So, yep, very excited about that.
One of my last questions, just your general thoughts on the future, the hard road ahead. I always think that we should be forward thinking with grit, resilience, determination, joy. But if we are to be biblical, I think things can get, probably will get worse. And so, just any thoughts on the future, as well as final thoughts?
Thoughts on the future. We really do have that hopeful feel of this new American Renaissance. We've seen kids, shift from this far liberal and leftist ideology. And what we're seeing that pendulum swing back, where kids nowadays, the teens nowadays are actually way more conservative than some of their parents may have been, or an older generation. And they're realizing that that wasn't working. So we're seeing that come back. We're very excited about that. We are very hopeful. But to your point, we are building things like a fintech division, because we're not just going to rely on the big tech that in the past has been able to cancel people. So being a part of creating those solutions has been very exciting and very fun. And we're just going to keep going.
Punk rocker Nick Cave, who I'm a fan of, gave an interview a year or two ago on Unheard, and he said to be a rebel today is to be a conservative and go to church. And so make of that what you will. And so again, where are the best places to go? Is it just publicsquare.com?
Yes, if you head to publicsquare.com, the first place you can go is to create an account. It's absolutely free. Then you can find another button that says add your business, and it would take about 8 to 10 minutes. And that's the first step if you want to add your church, your nonprofit, your business, your products onto the Public Square network, or as you called it, I'm sorry, not parallel economy. What do you call it? Counter economy. I love it. So the counter economy is growing right there on publicsquare.com. Feel free to join us.
I just had a thought. So I'm a one-man show, so I'm doing a million things and I get backlogged, but I've been meaning to open my Geopolitics and Empire merchandise store. So if I have a merchandise store, can I put that on? I don't know how that would work. Would that work, putting it on?
Yeah, absolutely. You sure can. As long as you can go through and tell us you are pro-life, you are pro-family values, and we know you love liberty, then yes and amen. Please join us.
All right. Support solutions like Public Square. And thank you for being on the podcast, Christina.
Thank you so much for having me. Bless you.